Rob Thompson, this is Charger Career Connect is another episode. We're back as you watch this right now as we record it. We're back after the holiday break. It's the beginning of January 2021. I got a special guest, Tyrone Seabrooks. We're going to get to him in a second, but I want to let you know that this podcast is done for you, connect you to alums who have been in your shoes, who have come from the same places you've come from, who had the same challenges you've had, overcome those. These are their stories and how they've graduated from UNH and went on to have a career and their mindset. So again, remember that you could set up a one-on-one career mentoring call with me at my email, which is listed here, rthompson@newhaven.edu. So T, how you doing, buddy? Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. It's just great to be here. Very fortunate and blessed. So during this particular pandemic season, man, where so much is going on, you just kind of count your blessings as you go along and realize that life is short. So thanks for having me. And thank you for what you're doing.
Well, someone's got to do it. So we got to connect the dots somehow. And I always look for those alums that are, have had success in business, whether as an entrepreneur or within corporate America. And you've certainly had a career. And I'm going to jump back into a question for you in a second, but I'm going to brag about you a little bit. You've come through the corporate America space. You've been an entrepreneur. You worked for Southwest Airlines for a very long time. You cut your teeth there. You're an entrepreneur as a personal trainer, so you know what it's like to have your own business. You jump back into corporate America. Again, I'm probably missing something there, but right now you're with Under Armour. So, you've had this this trajectory in and outside of corporate America. There's so many things that you know, and we want to talk about that, but let's take a step back and let's talk about you, where you're from, your journey to New Haven and some of the challenges that you faced along the way and how you overcame those challenges. So talk about CBA, from CBA on.
Yeah. Yep. Had a great academic and high school career at, CBA, Christian Brothers Academy in Albany, New York. But, during that time, honing in on football was a priority, but what I allowed to lack in was my academic maturity. So after CBA ended up going right to Bridgeton Academy, prep school in North Bridgeton, Maine. Had a great, again, football career there, but I had learned to, mature and have priorities and goals, which led to, an academic blossom, so to speak, for me, and realize that certain things just need to be prioritized. And from there, going to University of Rhode Island, accepting a full ride in Rhode Island. But again, keep, trying to be a man of my word that I was not in that particular sense. Had a really good freshman career in Rhode Island. Unfortunately, last game of the season, I ended up tearing my ACL and MCL, which was unfortunate, but it was a lesson to be learned. Had to go back home to the Albany area and rehab. Rehab was it was extensive. And during that period, you don't know if you're going to play again, and every athlete goes through that. I want to play again. I'm going to do my best to, work hard, but you still don't know, because now you don't know when you get on that field, first of all, the mental capacity it takes to overcome that. And second of all, are you going to still be that high level player? And realize that going through, those different things, I, went back, to Rhode Island and just realized that, I needed to change, rehab was great. Everything was, falling along those lines. But academically, again, I was not prepared, wasn't going to class, and, would rather, try to take the easy road out. And next thing you know, I had to make a decision. And that decision, led me to New Haven, connecting, with a couple of, at the time they were football players, and then came to New Haven, they were coaches. And got to New Haven and, just enjoyed my time at New Haven. My short time, played 2 years there, but enjoyed my time, enjoyed the relationships that led me there.
Yeah, New Haven's always been known, especially in those days, as a place of second chances. Yeah. And you certainly took advantage of it. Some people never get a second chance, and we all deserve one. and you and I both benefited from that, and the coaches from Coach Sperano and the whole staff that was there. But you are one of the 25 that made it to the NFL. You went to the Buffalo Bills, afterwards, and we talked about that. So, it doesn't matter where you play, talent will find you. But what was your mindset like? I mean, going, and there's a lot of our student athletes that have experienced, you know, severe injuries like ACL, MCL, and
Yeah.
it's brutal to come back from. But, what was your mindset when you came into New Haven? Was it a sense of, I have to prove something to myself, or I don't want to be another, hey, I was the guy who blew his knee out and ended his career? And were you at a point of like gratitude, like I'm so happy that I got this second chance? Like where was your mindset set, and how did you excel? Because you lit it up there for 2 years. I mean,
Yeah.
you tore it up.
Yeah,
So
thank you. My mind's, first of all, yeah, definitely a lot of gratitude, because New Haven did not have to offer me an opportunity, a chance. And then second of all, I went in there hungry. Um, but I also went in with the mindset that I had to accomplish some goals. And, academically, coming from, prep school to Rhode Island, I realized that I had to, set certain things in motion. So number one, I came in hungry academically, wanting to graduate. But number two, football wise, athletically, I came in determined. And I still had to learn the wide receiver position, because at Rhode Island, I was a DB that transferred into a wide receiver. So becoming a wide receiver was still new to me. So I was challenged with that, but I was still determined. I was still hungry. And I was just like, you know what? I was a weight room, giant. I used to work out with the linebackers and, Shane McNeely and those guys, and Mark Krejci. So yeah, I was hungry, very hungry and determined and grateful.
yeah, you're a beast. For a receiver, you're a 6'3", two whatever, like 280.
Yeah, I was 218, 220, man.
Yeah, it was a beast, and
Yeah.
you certainly took advantage of it. So when all that was said and done, and you kind of got done playing, I'm really interested in your career, your transition from being a student athlete to your career,
Yeah.
and what did you learn about yourself during that transition? Like, where was your mindset coming out of New Haven? Like, what did you say? Okay, this is what I'm going to do now because it seems pretty cool.
Even, going from New Haven to the professional setting of the NFL, and even thereafter, the career wise, you kind of feel still a little lost. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I had some things in mind that I felt like I needed to do, but I still was unsure of kind of how to do those things, because you're coming from playing high level to now you've gotten to the point where you've leveled off, and now this is life. This is the reality. You've been given a lot throughout your whole entire athletic career. And now it's a wake-up call. So mentally, I knew I had the capacity to handle, to deal with different challenges and situations and circumstances. But even then, I still had to mature in how to handle those things that came my way. But still showing a lot of tenacity when it came to, getting into corporate America, and fulfilling different positions and jobs, and, promoting the business to Southwest, to now Under Armour, and in between. Just realizing that, I can do this. And, a friend of mine told me one thing. He said, the same way you handle football, studying, learning, understanding, performing, working hard, and training, is the same shift that you should take over to you when you deal with corporate America. And, to this day, I'm still doing that.
So let's dive into that a little bit more. Talk about your morning routine, because I think this is so important for people, and especially young executives, certainly coming off of your routine as a student athlete.
Mm-hmm.
How has your morning routine, or your routine to train your mindset physically, mentally, spiritually, like all of those things matter in your career, which a lot of people miss, right? It carries over.
They do. Yep.
So how has that shifted? Like, what was that discovery process for you? Like, oh man, I knew like working out worked for me back then. I can't stop doing that along the way. Like, how did all
Yeah.
those things work?
Yeah. It just, you really try to incorporate them. And I think it also depends on what you're doing. What is your job? What is your responsibility? Then you throw that in with a family now, married, having children, and you're still trying to keep that same routine, although now you have to be more flexible. There's no more waking up at, 5 o'clock in the morning and hitting the gym like you can for an hour and a half. A lot of those things you got to do them in increments. Sometimes you may have to. There was times, when I was with, Southwest, I used to do, I used to go into the stairwell when I was working at the airport, and I would do crunches in the stairwell. I do push-ups, put my foot on the, third, fourth steps and doing push-ups. So you're always trying to find different ways of staying in shape, and keeping your body right as well as your mind and eating. So I think the big thing is just, understanding that if it can't work out for you at 5 o'clock in the morning, you got to find time in between or in the evening time. But you also can't allow yourself to get frustrated, because this is part of life. And when life happens, you have to have that ability to be versatile. And you're gonna create it, or you're gonna go along with it. And so I'm learning different aspects of that, as I continue to go along.
You mentioned a lot about maturity, maturation, leadership. Those are things that we talked about before. And they seem like just words when you're younger, and
Hmm.
they have so much more meaning when you get older, right?
Yeah.
So, and we do have a leadership program that John Mays does for us, assistant AD and
Hmm.
associate AD. And so, but let's talk about leadership. What are those things, those traits that I know they drill that into you when you're, at CBA, but
Yeah.
how has everything you've learned about leadership, and then how does that apply to your corporate life now?
Yeah. So I think that, they say leaders are born, which there is a certain capacity of that. Yes, true. But I think at the same time, you have to work your skill as you're going along. Different experiences will help you become a better leader, or it will help you level off. And, for me, one of the things I always take with me is I will never ask you to do something that I wouldn't be able to do myself. And learning how to delegate and learning how to communicate is huge when it comes to leadership, especially for me, even in a corporate setting. Communication is the key. I have to be able to communicate, with who I'm dealing with in different relationships, and having an ear to hear and not always, ready to speak and fire away and getting my opinion out there, showing a lot of humility and understanding what that means to be humble, as well as, showing people a lot of grace, because we're human, you're going to make mistakes. Um, and I think, when it comes to that as a leader, you got to realize that, people are going to make mistakes, but are you able to coach, teach, and allow them to, get back up and help them to blossom back into, the path that they have, been on and trying to get to? And are you getting them ready for your position? So communication and humility is huge. It's huge with that.
Communication. Our athletic director, Dr. Zanger, talks a lot about being mindful and careful with your words that you choose, and
Yeah.
that's words that you put on an email, a text, and words that you say out loud in front of other people in a conference setting or in a kind of a social setting between work or whatever. Um, and I've learned so many times. Sometimes when you speak up, you got to choose your times when you do speak
Yeah.
up. Um, Communication, choosing your words, being a leader, and letting your emotions get in, kind of getting into that gossip and drama. How have you found as a skill set, in your, especially in corporate America, does gossip and drama does it work in that setting?
It's always going to be there. It's always going to be there. But you said something very key, the emotional part of it. Learning to make decisions without always having your emotions up front. Um, And part of that does come from, being a good listener. The gossiping, man, you're going to get that every day, anytime. But for me, it's whether or not you entertain it. And as a leader, you got to learn to kind of put that hold right on it. You got to, because once it gets to the point where it's blowing up, gossip can ruin your career. It can ruin the atmosphere as a leader that you're trying to create. And then you got to understand, where is it coming from? Why are people gossiping, and why are, leaders getting caught up into the gossip? If you have a plan and you're a leader, and that plan is portrayed to the point where you're trying to help the leaders within you or under you grow, you got to stick to the point, and you can't be afraid to make that tough decisions. And whether it's cut the gossip off or who's gossiping, you got to make the tough decisions. And again, that's where that emotional standpoint comes from. Nothing personal, just business.
Yeah, I think it kind of carries into like the team atmosphere, because if you think about it, I think we've all been guilty of it. You get into they call them locker room lawyers, those your teammates that are the complainers, that they bitch and moan and whine and complain. Those are the same guys and women, men and women, that go on into corporate and work life that do the same thing. But now they just focus on the boss.
Yeah.
And that if you're doing that now in the locker room, on the field, with your parents afterwards, just knock it off, because it's going to hurt you later on in your career. I'm sure you could probably 100 examples of that you've seen yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that I think some people just really thrive on it. And you're right. Even in the locker room, I've gotten caught up many times, in locker room gossip. But at the same time, when I've sat back and realized, I'm like, man, did I really need to continue that? What was said? I don't even know the facts of it, but I'm still putting it out there. So I'm no better than, so and so and so and so. So I think you have to really be like, hey, you know what? There's a time and place, and you got to be able to stop it. You have to be able to put a halt to it, and then continue to just kind of grow from that. Because eventually it weeds itself out.
What if you were going to look back at the beginning of your career and where you are now? I mean, there's so many things that I could tell you. I got a laundry list of all the mistakes I've made. I got a laundry list of all the things that I've learned along the way. What have you learned most about yourself, and how have you changed from that time coming out to where you are now?
I had to learn that the world doesn't revolve around me. I had to learn that my ego cannot go before me in the point of belittling others, thinking I'm better than other people. Yeah, I had to. Here we go. You still there? Can you still see me there?
Yep, I got you.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so I had to learn those things. And I had to learn them, sometimes the hard way. I had to learn the hard way. So when I talk a lot about maturity and the maturation process, I'm daily trying to grow, daily trying to minimize, my mistakes, but more or less be aware of what I'm doing and how I'm doing them. Yeah.
This is the last question, and this is always kind of my final dagger.
Okay.
So looking back at, you sitting out in Helen Ann or wherever you lived, on campus or off campus, if you were going to go back in time and sit down and talk to yourself, and usually this is advice we probably give our own kids, but looking back at it and what you were doing when you're 19, 20 years old, and what your mindset was, what you're thinking about, what is that best advice that you would go back and give yourself right now if you could?
Wow.
It's a I know it's
yeah. I would say the best advice I would give myself,
like the overall, like what did you like? There's things that you've experienced, like, and that you maybe are anxious about that,
I would say give yourself room to grow. And as you're growing, bring people alongside with you. Because what I did in my career in New Haven, with Buffalo, it wasn't for me. It was for my families, for my mom, my dad, my sisters, and, other relatives. But for me, I think my ego was so big that I thought it was all about me and with me. So I would go back and just say to myself, hey, listen, this time around, you got to make sure you understand that this is not about you. And you need to bring people alongside and up with you as you're going. That's what I would tell myself. Yeah.
Wow. You nailed it. You nailed it. Wow, that was great. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
great advice. Just imagine if I
Yeah.
gave you those questions beforehand and you could have prepared for it. That was the best thing that happened. Yeah, but it's so, but
I was
it's
like,
so,
wow, okay.
yeah, I hit you with the dagger, but it's a great one. Bring people around with you
Yeah.
because you are caught up in your own little world. And you're right. Our
Yeah.
families and our friends enjoy the experience so much more than we do, and
Yeah.
because you think about it when you have your own kids now, there's nothing better than watching your own kids play sports,
Yep.
and you
Yeah.
appreciate it so much different now because you want them to have such a good experience. And,
Yeah.
you,
Absolutely.
and it's hard. You get lost in that as a student athlete because all you're thinking
Mhm.
about is yourself. You're not looking past the end of your own nose, and
Yeah. No,
sometimes
yeah.
sometimes when mom and dad want to take you out for dinner afterwards and you just want to go back and chill and realizing that dinner means everything because at some point
Yeah.
you're not going to have that opportunity to get that dinner anymore with them, you know.
Yeah, you hit it right on the you hit it right on the head. And again, as you're saying that, I'm thinking that, and I can remember those times and those days and those Saturday afternoons and evenings. And yeah, there's sometimes you're bringing it back, but there's sometimes I wish I could have did it over, and say, mom, when they jump in the car, you're ready to drive back to Albany, just like, whoa, ho, no, let's go, and so yeah, I try to make sure that my children understand the importance of, having a vision and trying to have a kind of foresight of what you're trying to do and who else is involved with you and be considerate while you're doing it.
Yeah, and enjoy the moment. Enjoy the moment as much as you
Yep.
can, right? You just kids
Absolutely.
enjoy the
Absolutely.
moment. But man, I enjoyed this. How's that for a segue? I enjoyed this podcast and this conversation with
Yeah.
you. So Tyrone, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Rob, and appreciate all that you're doing. And go Chargers.
Go Chargers. This is Rob Thompson. That's Tyrone Seabrooks over there. You're watching Charger Career Connect. Again, it's a long runway for you. So you're going to figure out what you hate doing long before you discover a career that you love. So keep going, enjoy the moment, and we'll see you next week, everybody. Take care.